If there's one thing I find more interesting than Resident Evil 4 itself, it's the development history behind Resident Evil 4 and all of the games and cut concepts that became a thing because of it. And I think with the new remake, specifically because Huey is dead right off the bat and we can no longer save the dog that would come back and help us in a later boss fight, it's indicating to me that there's a lack of understanding behind the fact that Resident Evil 4 was so great, not just because it's a great game in of itself, but because of the sum of all the parts that came before it that influenced it into what it ended up being. Whether or not you are conscious of the history of Resident Evil 4's development, there are things in there from other concepts and earlier builds that make it so special. So with that in mind, I want to make a top 7 list of things that Capcom really needs to add into this remake, or they risk losing a large chunk of the soul of Resident Evil 4. I'm Pliskin. I have horrible fucking allergies right now. Let's get right on into it.
Don't pee your pants.
Now, there's a good chance that it's just gonna be a me thing, but I remember watching the Possession build of Resident Evil 4 and seeing that Leon was using a Desert Eagle as his standard handgun. Now, I know they're already going to be adding in new guns that weren't in the original with the deluxe edition, so I would really appreciate just a Desert Eagle thrown in there, not as a Magnum replacer, but just to treat it like a really strong, average handgun. Just show it in a light we don't usually get to see it. Yeah, it's just a small one I'm throwing on here just for the fuck of it and just because I think it would be cool. But yeah, that Desert Eagle.
Don't pee your pants.
Now, I know we're going to be cutting out the Mecha Salazar, which I'm totally fine with. I mean, it was a cool enough set piece, but if we're making space in the game, I think we should totally bring back the cut doll enemies from the hallucination build of Resident Evil 4. In the hallucination build, Leon was once again infected with some kind of virus or disease, and it would cause him to hallucinate. And it would somehow animate these little doll-type enemies that could jump up and attack you by surprise. Now, the original draft of Resident Evil 4, also known as Devil May Cry 1, featured doll-type enemies, and Resident Evil 8 brought these fuckers back, but yeah, I think it would be pretty cool if we stumbled into a house in the village and we ended up finding a bunch of sentient dolls trying to kill us. It would be nice for that new kind of emphasized horror aesthetic that we're going for now.
Don't pee your pants.
The idea of Leon getting possessed and hindered by some kind of virus was so prevalent in Resident Evil 4's development that it still made it into the final game, albeit in a little bit of a disappointing way. Getting infected with Las Plagas seemed like it only mattered in the cutscenes. I would appreciate if in gameplay we could feel this a bit more, whether again that brings the hallucination elements in there, or if we just get some kind of gameplay debuffs and maybe we get weaker in some parts, or we have to look for some kind of restorative items. But there's a lot of stuff that could be done with this, both on a mechanical level and on a level of horror for adding in the surreal elements that would be pretty freaking cool in a new Resident Evil 4 game.
Don't pee your pants.
You know how the island kind of set the lowest point in terms of interesting environment and vibes in Resident Evil 4? Like the village was super cool and the castle was amazing, but then the island is just a bit boring despite having a lot of excellent scares and set pieces. This could be fixed. A lot of those industrial interiors could be on the cut airship, again from that Possession build. having the final like chase scene happen where you need to get onto this massive plane where Ashley's been kidnapped by Sadler, and then you have to go through the same kind of industrial grungy environments, but just the fact that you're on an airship will probably spice things up and make it cooler, make it more memorable, give it a little bit more of a vibe, maybe add a storm going on in the outside, get some of that Resident Evil Zero train level type of, ambiance and atmosphere. I don't know, the island was a great part, but it always suffered in terms of the atmosphere and ambience side of things. So I feel like adding in that cut airship level would probably fix that if you merged the two ideas of island and airship together. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below.
Don't pee your pants.
A lot of you guys probably don't know this, but the original draft of Resident Evil 4 ended up becoming Devil May Cry 1, and a lot of the aspects that made up Tony Redgrave, or as he later became known, Dante, also made up the modernized Leon S. Kennedy. The stylish moves, the cocky attitude, so much of Dante translated over to Leon. Then you have elements like the merchant system being inspired and probably just based off of the divinity statue system, where you go in and you pay an in-game currency to upgrade your weapons and buy items. So there's so much Devil May Cry DNA in Resident Evil 4 that not having references to it would be a sin. The most obvious choice would be to include some kind of costume for Leon and Ashley, some kind of Dante outfit to pay homage to the modern Leon's heritage, how he started off as Dante. If this isn't added in there, I don't know, I feel like it's just going to be a little bit, maybe not disrespectful, but definitely a missed opportunity for the remake. And we already know we're getting a shit ton of costumes, because in the deluxe edition alone they're adding in 4 extra ones, so I imagine the base game is going to have a decent chunk of costumes. So if there's no Dante costume and something for Ashley to put on that's Devil May Cry themed, that's going to be a major letdown for me.
Don't pee your pants.
In the same way that Devil May Cry serves as the birthplace of Resident Evil 4 and modern Resident Evil as we know it, Haunting Grounds serves as the accumulation of all of the cut concepts somehow being reused and made into their own game. The idea of a girl and a dog in a castle originated in those original drafts of Resident Evil 4. The idea of these kind of pursuer type enemies. A lot of reused assets between Resident Evil 4 and Haunting Grounds were used. They look so similar. Fiona is basically a prototype Ashley. And again, we'll talk about Huey more in a second, trust me. But there's just so much Haunting Ground in Resident Evil 4 and so much Resident Evil 4 in Haunting Grounds. So like Devil May Cry, you need to have some proper references here. Again, costumes would be amazing. A Fiona outfit for Ashley would be perfect, because here she is dressed as the concept character that essentially defined a lot of her traits. So if this is something that again is missing, it'll show a complete lack of understanding of what makes Resident Evil 4 so interesting. It can't exist as its own entity because it's made up of so many different parts. 3 games spawned out of the creation of 1 game. And I think there's in total, with the scrapped concepts, 6 games that could have 3 other games that could have been, and then 3 games that were, with Devil May Cry, Haunting Ground, and Resident Evil 4. So 6 games in total, 6 concepts. That all makes up Resident Evil 4. So if there's no Haunting Grounds Easter eggs or outfits, which is, Resident Evil 4's closest cousin, it's gonna be really freaking weird. And on that note,
Don't pee your pants.
this better be misdirection in regards to Huey, being, maybe they're trying to surprise us by being like, oh no, he's totally dead, you can't help him. But he needs to be in the game. Huey was the one definitive link between Haunting Ground and Resident Evil 4. since he literally got ported over from Haunting Grounds as is into Resident Evil 4, cementing their relationship in a tangible and physical way. The one character that shows up in both games and links them and reminds us all that, yeah, Resident Evil 4 was made up of a lot of games. Even people that have no idea of the history behind Resident Evil 4 have fond memories of this dog showing up and helping us, just like he does in Haunting Grounds. Like, it's just something you can't leave out. And it's kind of like a little microcosm of the larger issue of not recognizing all this development history in the remake. But what do you guys think? I see people talking about things with the remake, but they don't bring any of this stuff up, and this is what's important to me. Does it matter to you? Do you even like Resident Evil 4? I mean, of course you like Resident Evil 4, you're a human being. But, like, are you into this kind of stuff? I know this is deviating from the Metal Gear content I usually do, but sometimes I feel like, especially with some upcoming games that show so much potential, discussion is important. If you're interested in hearing more about Resident Evil 4's development in detail, I have a 3-part series that I'm going to link the first episode to down below. So with that being said, check that out if you want. This has been Pliskin, over and out.
This is Solid Snake. Hey, subscribe to Pliskin Boy. God damn it.
You heard him.